Hello everyone, my friends. In a time when everyone is trying to be the loudest voice in the room, I want to speak to you. Not with noise, not with shouts, but with stillness. I want to remind you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to be silent. Let me tell you something. Silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. The world may mistake your silence for surrender, but let them misunderstand. You and I both know that silence is where the strong gather their strength. It is where leaders sharpen their minds. It is where character is forged in the heat of quiet moments. Because when you are silent, you begin to see. You begin to hear what matters. You hear your inner voice, uninterrupted, undistracted. You recognize the lessons life is trying to teach you. You learn not just to react, but to respond. Not just to speak, but to understand. We live in a generation that celebrates instant opinions. But remember this: stillness builds clarity. And clarity builds direction, and direction builds destiny. You do not need to prove yourself to anyone. You do not need to respond to every insult. You do not need to perform for the applause of the crowd. Sometimes all you need is silence. Let others shout. Let them rush. Let them chase every passing moment like it's their last. You prepare. You listen. You learn, and when your time comes, you rise. Because you see, the world doesn't reward noise. It rewards results. It rewards those who practiced in silence and emerged in strength. Those who waited, those who endured, those who listened. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world that values loud opinions, fast answers, and constant communication, silence is too quickly labeled as weakness. But the truth is, silence is not the absence of strength. It is the presence of wisdom. To be silent when the world demands noise is not a retreat. It is a declaration that your power is not in your volume, but in your vision. Think of a great mountain, still, unmoving, towering. Doesn't shout to be noticed, doesn't bend to be understood. It stands silent, and yet its presence shapes the sky. So it is with the wise. They do not speak just to fill the air. They do not argue to be heard. They are selective with their words, not because they are afraid, but because they have learned that speech is sacred and timing is everything. Being silent is not about withholding your voice forever. It is about knowing when your voice is needed and why your words matter. Wisdom teaches us that not every battle deserves our energy. Not every criticism demands a rebuttal. Not every conversation requires our input. There is strength in restraint. There is power in pause. And those who have learned the value of silence often find that their words, when spoken, carry more weight. Silence is also a teacher. In quiet moments, we learn who we are. We begin to notice things we missed when the world was too loud. We hear our own thoughts. We wrestle with our fears. We meet our doubts face to face. And from this deep reflection, wisdom is born. It is not easy to sit in silence. For many, silence is uncomfortable. It demands patience. It confronts us with truths we'd rather avoid. But within that discomfort lies transformation. When you choose silence, you are choosing not to be reactive. You are giving yourself room to think, to evaluate, to understand before responding. This is a skill that separates the impulsive from the intentional, the fragile from the grounded. Anyone can raise their voice, but not everyone can hold their peace. And those who master the stillness within are often the ones who rise above the noise and lead with clarity. The greatest leaders, the most impactful thinkers, and the wisest elders in any culture or tradition have always known the value of silence. They do not interrupt, they observe. They do not insist, they inquire. They do not dominate, they discern. And through that discernment, they find truth not just in what is said, but in what is not. Silence allows room for nuance. It creates space for empathy. It gives birth to perspective. Now, some might say, but if I'm silent, won't people take advantage of me? Won't I miss opportunities? That is a fear rooted in insecurity, not in reality. The truth is, silence does not mean passivity. It means preparedness. It means waiting until you are aligned, mind, heart, and purpose, before you make your move. Silence doesn't steal opportunity. When you speak after silence, you speak with intention. When you act after silence, you act with direction. And when you emerge from silence, you emerge not as someone desperate to be seen, but as someone destined to be respected. That's the kind of strength that can't be faked. That's the kind of power that lasts. Let us remember, even nature teaches us the wisdom of silence. The seed grows in silence beneath the soil. The stars move in silence across the night sky. A heart beats quietly, faithfully, without needing praise. So too must we learn to grow in silence, to rise in silence, and to carry within us a quiet confidence that does not beg for recognition, but earns it. So be silent. Not because you have nothing to offer, but because what you are building inside yourself is too sacred to be rushed. Because in that silence, you are gathering strength. You are gaining clarity. You are becoming who you are meant to be. And when the time comes, the world will not forget your silence. It will remember the power of your emergence. In the fast pace of modern life, stillness has become rare. Every moment is filled with alerts, opinions, conversations, and distractions. We are told to always be doing something, to keep moving, to keep producing. But what if the most powerful thing you could do for your life right now isn't action, but stillness? What if in choosing silence and calm you actually gain the greatest advantage of all? Clarity. Stillness is not the absence of progress. It is the birthplace of progress. It is not idleness, it is focus. When you allow yourself to be still, to truly quiet your mind and surroundings, you begin to see what really matters. The noise fades, the pressure weakens, and the core of your purpose begins to speak, softly at first, then with conviction. Focus is not something that simply arrives. It must be cultivated, and the soil it grows best in is silence. You can't truly focus in the middle of chaos. You can't discover what you're meant to do when your mind is pulled in 100 directions. You need space. You need stillness. You need moments when you're not reacting, not performing, not chasing, but simply being. In that stillness, your thoughts start to settle. The emotions that were once clouding your judgment begin to clear, and what is left is what is true. When we are constantly stimulated by noise and movement, we lose touch with our internal compass. We forget why we started in the first place. We get distracted by what's urgent instead of what's important. But silence cuts through the noise. Quiet moments, moments of reflection, of prayer, of solitude, that we reconnect with our goals. We remember who we are, and more importantly, who we want to become. That kind of focus is not born in the spotlight. It is born in the shadows and the slow, deliberate practice of listening to your own life. When you sit in stillness, you're not wasting time. You're investing. You are taking stock of your direction. You are allowing your mind to rest, not so it can sleep, but so it can awaken. In our most silent moments, the biggest ideas are born. The clearest decisions are made. The strongest commitments are formed. And here's something powerful. Clarity doesn't just help you know what to do. It helps you know what not to do. It helps you say no to distractions. It helps you ignore the opinions that don't serve your mission. It gives you the strength to walk away from noise that adds no value to your soul. That's what stillness does. It puts you back in the driver's seat. Many people spend their lives reacting. They're caught up in the momentum of the moment, trying to keep up, trying to impress, trying to survive. But those who learn to pause, to breathe, to be still, they begin to live differently. They stop reacting and start responding. They stop following and start leading. Because with focus comes vision, and with vision comes purpose. Think about a calm lake. The surface is smooth, untroubled, but beneath that calm is depth. When something enters that water, whether a pebble or a boulder, you can see the ripples clearly. That's what clarity looks like. That's what clarity. It doesn't mean you'll never face challenges. It means when they come, you'll be able to see the impact, understand the shift, and respond with intention. Stillness doesn't make you less effective. It makes you precise. It makes your movements meaningful. And in a world full of distractions, precision is power. The greatest thinkers in history, whether philosophers, inventors, or leaders, carved out time to be alone, to be quiet, to reflect. And through that stillness, they were able to see what others couldn't. That kind of vision isn't a gift. It's a choice, a practice, one you can adopt starting now. So make time for silence. Protect your stillness. Treat it as sacred. Because it is. It is in those silent hours that your focus sharpens, your ideas evolve, and your purpose solidifies. Let the world race ahead. You don't need to move faster. You need to move clearer. And when you rise from that stillness, when you walk into your day with focus and clarity, you will not just be busy. You will be effective. You will not just chase dreams. You will fulfill them. Because stillness doesn't slow you down. It points you in the right direction. Then once you're facing the right way, there is nothing in this world that can stop you. Listening is one of the most powerful yet most underrated skills a person can possess. In a culture that prioritizes speaking, posting, reacting, and being heard, the simple act of listening often gets lost. But if you want to grow, if you want to succeed, and if you want to truly connect with people and ideas, then listening must become your foundation. And for real listening to happen, silence is essential. When you choose to be silent, you create space. That space is where learning happens. It's where ideas have room to breathe, and where people begin to feel seen and understood. You can't learn if you're always the one talking. You can't absorb new truths if you're constantly broadcasting your own. Growth requires humility, and humility begins with listening. Listening is not just hearing words. It's not just being physically present while someone else speaks. It is a form of deep attention. It is the decision to set your ego aside, to quiet the noise in your mind, and to tune in fully to what is being said. Not just with your ears, but with your heart. And when you listen like that, people feel it. Feel your presence. They feel your presence. They feel your respect. And that opens the door to trust, connection, and real understanding. Most of the world's misunderstandings come from people who didn't take the time to listen. Assumptions replace facts. Emotions override clarity. But when we listen, truly listen, we begin to see things differently. We hear not just the content, but the context. We catch the emotion beneath the words. We begin to understand not just what someone is saying, but why they're saying. The best leaders are exceptional listeners. They don't walk into a room thinking they have all the answers. They walk in with curiosity. They ask questions. They learn from the people around them. And because of that, they grow. Their perspectives widen. Their decisions become sharp. Their relationships deepen. And it all begins with silence, because silence makes space for voices other than your own. You'll find that when you listen more, you begin to learn more about others and about yourself. You start to notice your own assumptions and blind spots. You hear ideas that challenge your beliefs. And in that process, your character is shaped. You become less reactive and more reflective. Less rigid and more open. And that openness is what allows for growth. Listening also builds discipline. It teaches you to resist the urge, to interrupt, to argue, or to prove a point. It teaches you to hold space, even when it's uncomfortable. And in a world that often feels divided and chaotic, that discipline is rare and powerful. It gives you the ability to be calm in conflict, present in conversation, and wise in decision-making. There's also a quiet confidence that comes from being a listener. You don't need to dominate conversations to feel secure. You don't need to rush to prove your intelligence or value. Instead, your strength comes from your ability to understand, to empathize, and to respond with thoughtfulness. And when you do speak, people listen, because they know your words come from a place of depth, not ego. In learning environments, listening is even more critical. Whether you're in a classroom, a workplace, or a mentorship setting, the ones who grow the most are often the quietest at first. They're observing, they're soaking in knowledge, they're connecting dots that others are too busy to see. And when the time is right, they step forward, not with noise, but with insight. That's the power of listening in silence. Even in your relationship with yourself, listening is essential. In silence, you can hear your own thoughts more clearly. You can confront your fears, recognize your needs, and tap into your intuition. Too often, we drown out our inner wisdom with external noise. But your life's direction isn't found out there. It's found in here. And you won't hear it until you're willing to be quiet and listen. So if you want to grow, be silent. And in that silence, listen. Listen with openness, with patience, and with purpose. Let others speak. Let the world speak. Let your own soul speak. And as you listen, you'll learn. You'll gain wisdom, understanding, empathy, and strength. Listening is not a passive act. It is an active choice. And those who choose it consistently will find themselves rising above the noise, connected more deeply to others, and aligned more closely with the wisdom that leads to lasting success. There's a quiet kind of strength that doesn't show itself in noise or display. It doesn't need the approval of others or the applause of the crowd. This strength is built in private, in moments when no one is watching, and goes in silence and solitude and stillness. And it is in this quiet space that patience is developed. Because patience in silence is not passive waiting. It is active preparation. We often think of success as something that arrives in a moment, maybe after a big break or a fortunate opportunity. But more often than not, Success is the result of long, deliberate preparation that no one sees. It's hours of unseen work, countless private sacrifices, and a deep, steady faith that what is being built in silence will one day speak for itself. When you choose to be silent, to wait, to hold your energy instead of rushing out to prove yourself, you are not falling behind. You are preparing for your moment. Think of the athlete who trains day after day before the crowd ever sees them perform, or the student who studies in quiet nights while others sleep, or the artist who refines their craft away from the spotlight. All of them are preparing in silence, and when the moment comes, they are ready, not by chance, but by choice. Patience in silence is about trusting the process. It's the understanding that growth takes time, and that real strength doesn't happen overnight. You plant the seed, and for a long time, you may not see anything. But beneath the surface, something is happening. Roots are forming, foundations are being laid. And when the time is right, that seed will break through the ground. Not because it rushed, but because it was ready. The world will often try to rush you. It will try to convince you that you're late, that you're missing out, that you need to speak louder, move faster, do more. But rushing rarely brings excellence. It brings mistakes, stress, burnout, and shallow results. Patience, on the other hand, allows you to build deeply, to understand fully, and to act with wisdom. It's important to remember that silence does not mean you're doing nothing. In fact, some of your most important work will be done in silence. That's where discipline is built. That's where vision is clarified. That's where doubts are faced and overcome. That's where your character is tested. Not in what you do when everyone is watching, but in what you do when no one is. This kind of silent patience is not for the faint of heart. It requires endurance. It requires believing in yourself when results are not yet visible. It requires tuning out the noise and staying focused on the inner voice that tells you to keep going. It is not easy, but it is worth it. Think about how nature operates. The most magnificent trees grow slowly. They don't force themselves upward in a day. Instead, they spend time building strong roots, anchoring themselves deep into the earth. Then, and only then, do they rise. And when they do, they are not fragile. They are unshakable. That is what silent preparation gives you. The ability to stand tall when the time comes, because your roots run deep. In life, there will be seasons where you feel unseen, where your efforts seem unnoticed, where progress feels slow. Don't let those seasons discourage you. Embrace them. Use them, because those are the seasons when you're being prepared for something greater. You are building the kind of foundation that cannot be shaken. And when the world finally sees the fruit of your labor, they may call it talent or luck or genius, but you will know it was built in silence, through patience and persistence. So when it feels like nothing is happening, remember, something always is. You are growing. You are evolving. You are becoming stronger, wiser, and more focused. Your moment is coming. And when it does, you won't have to chase it. You'll be ready to meet it. Be patient. Be silent. Keep preparing. And when your time comes, let your results speak so loudly that you won't have to. In a world that is constantly moving, constantly talking, posting, broadcasting, there is something incredibly powerful about a person who can remain calm. A person who chooses silence not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand strength and peace. Silence allows you to be centered when everything around you feels chaotic. And that kind of calm doesn't just protect your peace, it amplifies your influence. When you are calm, you can see clearly. You can think without the fog of emotion, without the pressure to respond immediately, without the weight of other people's expectations clouding your decision. Calmness gives you space. Calmness gives you space. And in that space, you find clarity. You find wisdom. You find your own voice, undisturbed by the noise of the world. Emotional stability is a quiet superpower. When others are panicking, when emotions are running high, when opinions are clashing, your silence, your peace becomes a force. People they lean in. They wonder, why isn't this person shaken like the rest? That's the power of emotional discipline. It earns respect. It draws people to you, not because you're loud, but because you're grounded. Silence in the face of conflict isn't weakness, it's strength under control. It's knowing that you don't have to prove yourself in every situation. You don't have to argue every point. You don't have to defend your worth. You know who you are. Because of that, you're not easily moved by chaos. That kind of poise, it's rare, it's admirable, It's powerful. Being calm doesn't mean you don't feel deeply. It means you've learned how to manage those feelings. You've developed the self-awareness to notice your emotions without letting them control you. That's not something that happens overnight. It's a habit, a discipline. And silence is a key part of that practice. Because in silence, you have the chance to process before you react. You have the opportunity to ask yourself, what really matters here? What's the best response? Not the fastest one. When you learn to respond rather than react, you change everything. Reactions are emotional. They are quick, impulsive, and often regrettable. But responses are thoughtful. They are grounded in values, guided by perspective, and shaped by clarity. And silence gives you the gap between stimulus and response, the gap where wisdom grows. That silence also becomes a kind of emotional shield. It protects you from unnecessary stress, from getting dragged into drama, from letting other people's energy control your own. You realize you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to match the volume of someone else's anger. You can choose peace. You can choose to listen. You can choose to walk away, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Peace becomes your posture, not because you ignore problems, but because you approach them with strength and self-control. You don't run from challenges. You just don't let them shake you. And when you carry yourself like that, it changes how others treat you. They stop pushing your buttons. They stop underestimating you because they realize they're dealing with someone who is in control. And let's not overlook this. Inner peace is not just good for others. It's good for you. It gives you energy. It gives you freedom. You sleep better. You think better. You live because when your emotions aren't swinging wildly from one end to the other, you start to feel more in tune with your purpose. You become more productive, more resilient, and more joyful. You learn that peace isn't something you find. It's something you build, day by day, moment by moment. It's choosing silence when anger tempts you to speak. It's taking a breath when your pride wants to argue. It's stepping back when the moment wants you to push forward without thinking. It's learning to lead with your spirit, not just your voice. If the world feels too loud, too fast, too overwhelming, try silence. Not as an escape, but as a strategy. Let it be your way of protecting your peace, sharpening your focus and anchoring your emotions. Let it be the foundation of your strength, because the calmest person in the room often ends up being the wisest, the most respected, and ultimately, the most powerful. There's a deep and steady kind of confidence that doesn't come from attention, applause, or outside approval. It comes from within, from knowing who you are, what you value, and where you're going. And often that kind of confidence is developed not in the spotlight, but in the silence. Because when you are silent, you have the opportunity to build something far more valuable than popularity. It's self-trust. In silence, there are no distractions, no need to perform, no pressure to impress. It's just you, your thoughts, your doubts, your dreams, and the quiet space to sort through them all. And that space is powerful. Without filters, without filters, without filters, without noise. You don't need to tell the world who you are when you already know. You don't have to prove yourself to others when you've already proven something to yourself. That's what silence gives you. It gives you the ability to hear yourself think, to hear your intuition, to align your inner world before engaging with the outer one. And when that alignment happens, confidence becomes natural, not forced, not loud. Just some of the most confident people you'll ever meet aren't the ones shouting from stages. They're the ones who walk into a room and don't need to be noticed. Why? Because they're secure, they're steady. Their self-worth isn't tied to how many people are watching. It's rooted in who they've become when no one was watching. That kind of confidence is built through discipline. It's built by the person who wakes up early to work on their dream when the rest of the world is sleeping. By the one who keeps their commitments when there's no audience, no recognition. By the one who chooses integrity over attention and consistency over hype. These people don't need to say much. Their lives speak for them. Their silence is full of strength. When you're constantly speaking, constantly explaining, constantly defending who you are, it's often a sign of insecurity, not confidence. But when you can be silent and still know your worth, that's real power. Because you're not seeking validation. You're grounded in truth. Confidence built in silence is durable. It's not shaken by criticism. It's not inflated by praise. It's consistent. because it's not dependent on external conditions. And that steadiness gives you a unique kind of authority. When you do speak, people listen. And because you're the loudest voice in the room, but because your voice comes from a place of depth you've seen in the world. In leaders, in mentors, and people you admire. They don't rush to speak. They don't rush to react. They pause, they think, and then they speak with clarity and conviction. That's the kind of presence that silence builds. It trains your mind to slow down, to observe, to listen, and to choose your words with purpose. And what's even more important, silence helps you own your story. You're no longer chasing someone else's definition of success. You're not comparing your timeline to theirs. You're not pressured to fit in. You've taken the time to understand yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your calling. That's why confidence built in silence is authentic. It's not based on a role you're playing. It's based on the person you truly are. It also helps you master restraint. You don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to weigh in on every conversation. You don't have to be seen all the time. You realize that not every moment is your moment, and that's okay. Because your value doesn't decrease just because it's not on display. In fact, your value often grows in the unseen, in the quiet, the moments of unseen growth and preparation. Silence becomes a kind of armor, not a wall, but a protective layer that keeps you from being swayed by every voice and every opinion. It lets you walk through the noise without being consumed by it. And in a world full of people trying to be louder, faster, flashier, you become a presence that people trust. Because you're not trying to impress, you're simply standing in who you are. So let the world do the talking. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them be surprised when you speak and your words carry weight. Because your silence has been working. It's been building confidence, building clarity, building purpose. And when the time comes to speak or act, you won't do it for approval. You'll do it with authority. That's what confidence in silence gives you. The courage to move forward, the strength to stay grounded, and the wisdom to know that your worth isn't measured by how loudly you speak, but by how deeply you live. Silence is not the absence of activity. It is the foundation of preparation. And preparation is what sets apart those who merely wish for success from those who are truly ready for it. In silence, you have the opportunity to sharpen your skills, strengthen your mindset, and align your vision with your purpose. You aren't hiding, you're building. You're training. You're growing. And when your moment comes, you won't have to search for it. You'll rise into it already equipped with everything you need. Many people chase opportunities with desperation, hoping for a breakthrough, a spotlight, a moment to shine. But when that moment comes, are they truly ready? Because opportunity without preparation is a mischance. And preparation without noise is the discipline that ensures when your name is called, you're not scrambling. You're stepping into something you've already rehearsed in the quiet. Think of the greatest performers, athletes, leaders, or innovators. Before the world ever heard their name, they were putting in the work behind closed doors. They were sacrificing comfort for growth. They were learning from failure without broadcasting. They were studying their craft, building their stamina, developing habits, and building emotional resilience. All of that happened in silence. All of that was preparation. And because of it, when the world finally paid attention, they were ready. Not surprised, not lucky, just prepared. There's something sacred about that kind of unseen effort. You're not preparing to prove anything to anyone. You're preparing because you respect the future you're trying to build. You understand that your dreams are not random. They're assignments. And fulfilling those assignments requires discipline, skill, and readiness. Silence allows you to zoom in, to study the details that others overlook, to revisit your vision without distraction. It gives you time to master the small things that make a big difference. In silence, you become your own competition. You stop comparing yourself to others and start refining your own process. You become patient with your progress because you know the best things take time. Preparation in silence also builds a kind of focus that is rare in a distracted world. It trains your mind to stay locked in on what matters. It helps you resist the temptation to rush, to show off unfinished work, to seek attention before the work is complete. Because when you value preparation, you stop chasing moments. You start preparing for seasons. And here's the truth, preparation will always reveal itself. Whether or not anyone sees the work now, it will show later in your performance, your results, your confidence, your consistency. can't fake preparation. You either did the work or you didn't. And silence is the space where that work is done. You also learn in silence that not every plan needs to be shared, not every goal needs to be announced. Some things are more powerful when they're protected. When they're nurtured in quiet, away from opinions, away from pressure. That's where the vision grows roots. That's where it becomes real. Not just something you talk about, but something you live. And when the time is right, silence gives way to action. That action is not hesitant. It is bold. It is precise. It is backed by preparation that no one saw, but everyone will feel. You'll walk into opportunities not wondering if you're good enough, but knowing you've put in the time, knowing you've built the foundation. And that foundation gives you confidence, not arrogance, not entitlement, but certainty. As we're in a season of silence right now, don't resent it. Embrace it. Yep. Let it refine you. Let it stretch you. Let it prepare you. Because your silence today is the preparation for your influence tomorrow. You are not behind. You are becoming. You are not forgotten. You are not forgotten. You are being formed. Remember, the best warriors train long before the battle. The best musicians practice long before the concert. The best minds study long before the test. They all prepare in silence. And when the moment comes, they are ready. That can be your story too. Choose silence. Choose preparation. Let the world be loud while you stay focused. Let them wonder what you're doing while you're building in secret. And one day, when your preparation meets your opportunity, the silence will break, not with noise, but with impact.